can you explain the CNET vision in simple terms for our audience? And how does rerouting ocean water inland actually work?
We got a lot of water coming at us. The ice is melting, it's coming at us, and it could be, the best gift we've had in a long time of all this water that we could do something with. Now, with the ocean, we're talking about a lot of water, right? This is not something that a handful of reservoirs are going to make a difference. We're talking something on a mega scale.
But I think it is quite alarming, like looking at the facts and figures, right? Sometimes we get scared in terms of what is going to happen in the next few years, and especially the kind of climatic changes that are happening, right? It is quite alarming. And at least people like you are pioneering in this and trying to save the planet. I'm really glad.
Imagine Western Australia looking at it 40 years from now from space, and it looks like the Amazon, right? I mean, granted, maybe new forests on the new hillsides may not be that mature yet and so forth, but totally these new green spaces. There's lots of ways now that we know how to grow sea kelp and things, floating kelp farms and stuff that, are really good for pulling the carbon back out of the atmosphere. So what we're creating here also may help solve the problem to a certain degree to where, we could reduce the global warming and bring this to a point where maybe in the worst case, we find that the sea will never go up more than 10 feet, right? Because we found the balance again and we didn't let all the ice melt, but, we had to deal with some of it. So those are kind of the possibilities.
We already have so many global climate efforts, but you say that they have struggled to make real impact, right? So how is your systems thinking approach different from those existing mechanisms? So folks, you have tuned into TGV and hearty welcome to the Guiding Voice podcast series, the world's only quadrilingual podcast at this moment of recording. And we are trying to embark into multiple languages as we speak. And here we embark on transformative conversations for a better future. And we want to simplify and amplify your journey to success. I'm your host, Naveen Samala, dedicated to making the world a better place by bringing you wisdom through valuable discussions with experts designed to simplify and amplify your success. And thank you so much for tuning in. So, folks, we are joined by Russ Walsh, who is an engineer, innovator, and author, and he has advised over 100 global leading companies, including Google, Apple, and General Electric. And after 3 decades in information technology, risk, and cybersecurity consulting, he turned his expertise towards solving one of humanity's biggest challenges, which is raising sea levels. As the creator of the CNET vision, Russ is reimagining the planet's future by redirecting oceans inland to create vast and life-sustaining ecosystems. And his bold vision could prevent mass displacement, regenerate the earth, and also unlock trillions in global growth. So we are going to have an exciting conversation. And Russ, hearty welcome to the Guiding Voice podcast series. How are you doing today?
Hey, Naveen, it's great. Yeah, thanks. I'm doing well. And it's exciting knowing that you and I used to work together years ago at GE, not directly, but I think we had, I don't know, dozens of mutual LinkedIn connections. So we do have our worlds of intersected quite a bit over our careers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, this is one of those instances where I have interviewed GE alumni, and I'm glad to have this conversation. And before we get started, so first things first, why should somebody tune into our episode and spend their valuable time with us?
I mean, again, if you asked me 5 years ago, I would have said, okay, the sea's going up an inch a century. This is a problem for, 10 generations from now, right? But it's going up about an inch a decade. And in some places, we're having subsidence at a pretty substantial level. So in places like Bangladesh and Jakarta, Indonesia, this is very real to them right now. It's not getting a lot of world attention, but it's a big problem. And then when you hear stories that with the rising seas increasing more and more, that places like the Maldives, even the parts of Florida in the U.S. could be gone 30 years from now. 2 weekends ago in North Carolina, there was a storm off the coast on a beautiful sunny day and homes were collapsing, beautiful homes collapsing into the sea. So this is real. It's just not getting a lot of attention. And considering in the worst case, the sea could go up 200 feet, which is done before, a third of the world population would have to be displaced. That's a pretty big problem, and maybe the biggest problem we've ever faced. And it's very quiet, but we got to change that. And I'm hoping your podcast will help fuel that.
Absolutely. So, folks, today we are going to have an interesting conversation and mostly intriguing conversation on the topic at hand, from Silicon Valley to saving the planet and Russ Walsh's audacious plan for the future. But before we get started into the mainstream, so here is an exciting twist. As always, let us tickle our guest brain first. So, Russ, get ready for the first rapid fire round. I'm going to mention a few words, and I would love to hear the first thing that comes to your mind in response without thinking much. And if you're ready, let's get started.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. All right. And my first word is curiosity.
Okay. And my response is it doesn't kill most cats.
Invention.
Innovative new solution.
Future.
An exciting journey.
Leadership.
Ability to take an idea or task and organize people to complete it.
Universe.
Where did it come from?
Success.
Accomplishments with smiles.
Accomplishments with smiles. Amazing. Aliens.
Well, if in America, aliens are talked about quite a bit. If it's what I call legal aliens, the ones from outer space, I think there's a real opportunity for people in the fashion industry. They never seem to have anywhere. Okay.
Okay. And then oceans.
Oh, gosh. Huge, exciting, beautiful, and a bit intimidating.
Mm-hmm. Life.
Life. From atoms to dreams, so many mysteries.
And here comes the last word, role model.
I've adopted a new one this year. There's a guy named Charlie Kirk you might have heard about. Young man, I had no idea he was only 31. Brilliant guy who was really trying to bridge the gap and bring people together like never before. And some people are saying he was not doing it well, but I think he was doing as good as you could. Make a lot of people with different opinions come together in a really nice way and stuff. So I would put him as my role model right now.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Excellent, Russ, and thank you so much for participating in the rapid fire round number 1. There is one more rapid fire round towards the end of the episode, so stay tuned. And thank you once again for joining me today, and also thanks for being part of our journey in shaping the careers and lives of millions across the globe. So, Russ, we'll get into the mainstream questions, and first and foremost thing, you began your career in IT and cybersecurity. So, what actually inspired the leap from consulting tech giants to tackling climate change on a planetary scale?
It's interesting. I would say COVID was the driver. So I was at a little company called GE when that hit and that global pandemic. And I was involved with our aviation business to a certain degree. I was not I was kind of on the side on the risk and compliance, helping them with their cybersecurity. And when the COVID hit and the airports all shut down, it was a huge impact to the GE aviation and aerospace business because I think we had something like 10,000 people who just work at airports servicing the engines of the planes that come in, or maybe it's like 50,000 or something employees. It's crazy. And I think they had to let 10,000 go within 3 months because there's no planes flying. And so the CEO of the company is like, I don't care what your role is within the company. If you can think of things that we can do to make a difference, especially for our aerospace business, then bring those ideas forward. And for me, it was like, okay, well, the wildfires are raging all over the planet in places that have never even had wildfires. And fighting fires with air power is one of the best ways to do it. Maybe we can get more involved in that and reprovision a lot of our airplanes to do that. And I put together a plan, and I had a task force that we worked on for several months, put a proposal together in front of executives. And, hopefully they took some of those ideas because I did leave GE about 6 months later. But while I was doing that research, I kept seeing these things about sea level rise. Cause when you do research now, it always prompts you, hey, you might want this, you might want to look at this, right? And I just kept seeing it. And finally, like, all right, let me see what this is about. And that's when I really got into what I saw with what's happening in sea level rise that was terrifying. And it's like, why is this so quiet? Right? Again, if the sea was only going to go up an inch a century, we've got a lot of time. But when we're talking now an inch a decade, and in some places with subsidence, I think they say parts of Jakarta feel like it's gone almost a 3-foot impact now in the last 50 years. That's huge. Places there are flooding every day at high tide. It's a terrible situation. And they're spending $33 billion to build a new capital city for Indonesia because of sea level rise and climate issues. So what was more scary was what are the solutions being proposed? Does anybody have a good idea that we can solve this or deal with this? And that was the amazing thing to me was everything out there was negative. Everything was painting a doomsday picture. If you look, some of the recent authors on this just released more books about, retreat. Ultimately, we all have to move the world's population to higher ground above 200 and something feet or whatever, because that's how bad it could be in the worst case. I'm from Columbia, South Carolina, in the middle of the state of South Carolina, and the sea used to come that far in at one point. We had sand dunes and oyster shells in our backyard, and we were around that 200-foot elevation. So it's happened before. And, that was a different time. We don't know if that was thousands of years ago or millions of years ago, but the world we live in now, that's unacceptable. We can't have that happen. So the idea of, hey, could we do something to solve this came up. And as I've been, working this through with some of the top climate leaders, engineers, researchers, it's interesting to have these conversations where people who just spent 2 years researching this, and you go, what if we could redirect the ocean, these inland seas? What if we could capture more water where it rains a lot? And they go, why did nobody think of that before? That's it. But I'm still to get momentum on this. So I decided I better write a book and really get this going. So I quit my full-time job, and this is my thing now, driving this, getting the book, getting the word up there, and trying to get this going. And we do have a consortium in Silicon Valley already moving together between academia, some of the largest construction company executives on board, people from FEMA, which in America, I've got a lot of news across the globe lately that, they're the Federal Emergency Response Organization, and they've been kind of controversial, but nonetheless, they know how to deal with disasters and they know how to plan for them. And they've been terrified as well about what sea level rise means. So that's kind of how I went all the way from, kind of doing risk and compliance focused on cybersecurity for tech companies to shifting into this. So it was more of a, hey, let's roll up our sleeves and see if we can help an $80 billion company figure out where they could go next and make a difference to the world.
Yeah, got it. I think that's quite a lot of research, and all the great work that you have started is going to yield some good benefits to the planet. So I'm really proud of the work that you are doing. All right, so let's keep the ball rolling. And Russ, talk to us about who is your guiding voice.
Oh gosh. Well, I definitely believe there's a God and creator who we can know personally. And if we had a chance, if we'll give him a chance, and he'll open up the right doors for us at the right time. That's the guiding voice I listen to.
Okay, great. And also share with our audience about your success mantra, as in top 3 things that have contributed to your success so far.
Okay. I think one, I'm organized. I still take meeting notes, not on this one because we're trying to talk, but generally speaking, I take a lot of written notes and I keep those extremely organized. I can go back and pull my notebooks and notes from decades ago. So, if I want to remember who was that person I talked to at eBay in 2005, I've got the records there, and it's quite helpful. And tick mark things by colors. So if I want to find this project or that project, I can easily flip back to 2 weeks ago when we had our last meeting. So that's been something. I'd say the second one is I enjoy people. I really enjoy working with people, interacting with people. I'm kind of what they call an extroverted introvert or an introverted extrovert. I like my quiet time. I like to go get stuff done. I love having 4 to 6 hours in a coffee shop or something, just focus, get these things done, and then go back and have a great, evening with my wife or friends or something, or just meetings where are very engaging. So I like that kind of blend of people and getting things done. And then third, really, I would say, keeping commitments and avoiding bad commitments. Those are I've really tried to do because I've seen people just want to take the next job role that came along because somebody called, and you're thinking, that's got a lot of demands. You're going to be traveling a lot. You got a young family. Do you really want to do that? Right? You have to think about this. I did that one stretch of my life, and it was intentional to try to open up some doors, and it did. A year and a half at IBM brought me to Silicon Valley. So, I made the sacrifice with a young family then. But overall, we have to be very careful about what we commit to and what we say yes to.
Hmm. Excellent. And I still remember my role as a PMO leader during my stint with GE, where we used to capture a lot of meeting minutes and all. I think that is one thing that many of us have learned during stint with GE. And you made me a little nostalgic by mentioning that. And let's move forward. So, Russ, can you explain this CNET vision in simple terms for our audience? And how does rerouting ocean water inland actually work?
Yeah, this is where it gets fun. To me, we on a meeting last week where I was talking with some people about this concept, we concluded and just said, the bottom line is, we got a lot of water coming at us. The ice is melting; it's coming at us, and it could be, the best gift we've had in a long time of all this water that we could do something with. But the question is kind of like, as we've been saying, how many swimming pools do we need to build? Where are we going to build them, and how big do they need to be? Right? That's ultimately because we're trying to do a man-made construction of some sort. If it's putting dams and mountainous regions of really areas that are getting a lot of rainfall and snowfall, let's do that. They're building a new reservoir in California with the concept of just at least having more storage. They didn't build it for sea level rise, but we'd get that benefit. Every time we displace water, we make a difference. Now with the ocean, we're talking about a lot of water, right? This is not something that a handful of reservoirs are going to make a difference. We're talking something on a mega scale. But the good news is we've got a lot of unused land in Australia, the Sahara, and tucked away in other places around the world we might not even realize. Even places like the coast of the U.S. where it's swampland in Florida and along the coast, but it's so swampy they can't even do anything with it, right? I mean, there's a stretch between Orlando, Florida, and Cape Canaveral where they launched the rockets. It's like 40 miles. There's nothing. There's not even an exit on a freeway for like 20 miles. It's just wilderness. It's like, what if we could reshape that, build mountains and get that to, be something that would hold a 10-mile by 10-mile lake. And then we fill that in as it rains and capture more water to where we change the game. But imagine in Florida suddenly having 2,000-foot mountains near Orlando, Florida, where you can see Disney World on one side and the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean the other directions. That's the landscape we could potentially create before we're all done and really transform the globe. Bottom line, though, is we could make this a really good outcome. We could turn this from doom and gloom, which is what it seems to be, and what's terrifying all of our young people that they think they're inheriting a world where there's no hope, to a world with a really bright outlook and allowing these kids to become civil engineers and get their hands dirty again, right? Instead of just pushing buttons the rest of their life and being a programmer or something, right? We can go out there and physically solve this problem, and it could be a real game changer.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Got it. And what you mentioned, like basically you started focusing on this raising sea level, especially during COVID time and all, right?
Right.
So can you talk about the specific moment? Okay, what inspired when the idea for this CNET first struck you, and was it gradual curiosity or a sudden epiphany kind of thing?
I think it was a mix of the two, um, where
Hmm.
it just seemed like, I mean, I'm brainstorming, like I'm looking at this and I'm frustrated, like, wow, okay, this is a bigger problem than I thought it was going to be. And then when I watched National Geographic videos, NASA, NPR, very reputable outlets, science organizations, and they're all painting this doomsday picture. We can't win this. I just was thinking, looking at the globe, I'm like, it seems like we could do something, right? And we're calling it like the Suez Canal on steroids. When they built the Suez Canal, 120-mile long man-made body of water, essentially now, That lowered the global sea level just a little bit because they weren't really trying to capture water any more than what's they absolutely had to get ships to go through the channels and everything. But we showed we could do it. So if we could take that concept on a mega scale, right, we could do it. Because I mean, when cities and towns set up, over the last several centuries, one of the first things they do is, even if they had to go back manually with shovels and old fashioned ways of doing things, they would build places for the excess water to go when it would rain too much or something would happen, right? To protect the town or whatever, right? So we've been doing it for centuries. This is kind of the same concept. It's just on a mega scale that we're looking at. But the concept is similar to what we've already been doing at towns and cities all over the world for centuries.
Mm-hmm. Got it. I think it is quite alarming, like looking at the facts and figures, right? Sometimes we get scared in terms of what is going to happen in the next few years, and especially the kind of climatic changes that are happening, right? It is quite alarming. And at least people like you are pioneering in this and trying to save the planet. I'm really glad. And let's move forward to the next one. So you have said this raising sea levels could be the greatest gift to humanity since electricity, right? So
Yeah.
that's a different perspective altogether. So elaborate more on that.
Yeah, I mean, just look at Australia. Obviously, the Sahara, right? It's just almost uninhabited because they don't have water. There's no hope that rainstorms are suddenly going to start coming their way and transform. So all of a sudden, hey, we've got more water than we know what to do with. And granted, for redirecting the seas, we're talking about salt water, but Saudi Arabia has no fresh water source. So every bit of drinking water they have, they created it themselves through massive desalination. So we already have the capability of doing these things. We also, like I said, the Central Africa, the Philippines, there's so many places around the world that get tremendous amounts of rainfall at times of the year. And if we can capture more of that, right? It's a game of water. How much water do we need to capture? Where do we need to put it, right? That's the gist of what we're trying to do. But we know that the water's coming at us in a sort of steady, predictable way. Now, they're saying there could be decades, even before the end of this century, where the sea could go up 2 or 3 feet in one decade. I mean, that to me is scary. And we better be really good at dealing with, the ocean coming at us by that point. We've got to get this going. We've got to start building this and prototyping it to the point by 30 years from now, we're like, oh my gosh, the forecast is this decade we're going to get 12 inches of sea level rise. We better, be creating these lakes and so forth at a massive scale. And, one of the things we're looking at is, I mean, right now, when you see a construction site, they've built some equipment now that's pretty big, bulldozers and digging equipment that's pretty
Hmm.
large, but it's still a drop in the bucket to what we could do. Because when you think of a cargo ship from China to wherever it's taken, those massive boats that we're building now, military ships, aircraft carriers, cruise ships. We build these things now that are enormous. What if we could build digging equipment, something on the scale like that, where a bulldozer that's 200 feet tall and 800 feet long, and it could dig something the size of the Grand Canyon, or a bunch of these together could dig something the size of the Grand Canyon in 4 or 5 years, right? I mean, they're moving massive amounts. So this is what the
Yeah.
opportunity to create, new types of equipment that's again, it's very physical what we could do and how we need to do it. But that's kind of the idea of what this could be. But again, I really think this is a gift to mankind for sure, that, we've got something here, a new resource. It's almost like oil's coming out and we just figured out how to make engines and we need something called oil. So it's like when they discovered it and realized we could transform it, there's still worries we're going to run out someday, that the planet may not have enough. But right now for water, we're good for about 500 to 1,000 years probably of having this water flowing at us potentially. But what's also cool about all this is when we build these things, imagine Western Australia looking at it 40 years from now from space, and it looks like the Amazon, right? I mean, granted, maybe new
Mhm.
forests on the new hillsides may not be that mature yet, and so forth, but totally these new green spaces. Uh, and there's lots of ways now that we know how to grow sea kelp and things, floating kelp farms and stuff that, are really good for pulling the carbon back out of the atmosphere. So what we're creating here also may help solve the problem to a certain degree to where, we could reduce the global warming and bring this to a point where maybe in the worst case, we find that the sea will never go up more than 10 feet, right? Because we found the balance again and we
Mhm.
didn't let all the ice melt, but, we had to deal with some of it. So those are kind of the possibilities.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. Really interesting facts, and I'm looking forward to how things are going to shape up in the near future. And also, Russ, in your view, we already have so many global climate efforts, but you say that they have struggled to make real impact, right? So, how is your systems thinking approach different from those existing mechanisms?
Well, I was at the Verge Climate Conference in San Jose, California last week and was talking with some of the leaders. And I said, to a certain degree, what we're doing around climate is phenomenal. I mean, everybody on the planet
Hmm.
knows that climate change is at least controversial, whether you believe it or not. They've really done a great job of bringing it to the mainstream to where everybody has it on the radar. Even young kids in elementary schools now know about climate change. What's shocking, though, is that how few people know about sea level rise. Because to me, climate change is a little bit nebulous as to how big of a problem is it and what is it going to be. I mean, some people are just define it that, we may have 20% more extreme weather events than we did 100 years ago, and that's unacceptable. And for a lot of people, it's like 20% is hard to. I mean, it's not like you're saying you're going to reduce typhoons and storms, down from to where they almost never happen, right? You're just saying, we have 20 every year and now we're going to have 25 and we're going to spend trillions of dollars to fight that 5 extra storms. That's hard for people to get their hands around, why do we spend the money to solve that? But when you say, okay, a third of the world's population is going to be displaced, many countries won't even exist anymore. That's a different thing. As I've said to people before, if the temperature in the room you're sitting in
Hmm.
is 3 degrees warmer than you'd like it to be, it's a little uncomfortable. But if you got 3 feet of water where you are, you got a much bigger problem. And that's what we're facing. So trying to shift the narrative from, climate, we got a problem here. But guys, we got now this one of the symptoms of this problem is this rising sea issue, and we can't ignore it any longer. And part of the reason in America, at least, that they are
Hmm.
ignoring it is the government leaders are terrified that if the general population is aware that the house you just bought near the coast won't be there 30 years from now or 40 years from now, people might start fleeing these areas and it could have devastating economic impact. But it's going to happen if the longer we ignore it, the worse it's just going to get. But in America, there are places now you can't get various kinds of insurance, flood insurance, fire insurance, and stuff. And mortgage companies are also conscious that you want a 30-year mortgage to buy this home in Miami, Florida. Well, we're not going to give you but a 15-year loan because we're not comfortable 30 years from that home's going to be resellable or even exist, right? That's our reality. So we need to change that narrative, but only not to terrify everybody, but to say, guys, we got a solution, but we got to get busy, right? We can't ignore the problem, but we also can't ignore the solution either.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Got it. And also when some sudden large scale innovation is being created, right? They face a lot of skepticism, and you are also coming up with some bold vision, right? So how do you balance this bold vision with the practical execution and also probably attract global collaboration?
I mean, for us, it's been one step at a time so far. Again, a year
Hmm.
ago, I'm just it got me. Granted, I had credentials of working with GE and Google and Apple and all these companies, but still, to be out there saying, "Hey, guys, there's an asteroid that's going to hit us in 30 years." And they go, "Who are you?" Right? You're a guy with a telescope. And when you get the professionals in front, they go, "Oh wow, this guy's right. This is going to hit. Now we got to do something about it." I think in the case here, we're looking at, uh, the skepticism is inherent because I'm proposing something that is different. It's radically different, but it's also very common sense. So I am struggling to get advocates on board as quickly as I'd like. But I do have, like I said, we do have a consortium coming together here in Silicon Valley now. We meet more than once a week. We're starting to present at conferences and things like that. So we're getting momentum. But where would I like this to be? I'd love this to be, something that the UN has in front of them in a few more months that, they're talking about this and not only talking about it like, okay, somebody's got a solution, folks in Silicon Valley, this makes sense. And then really start to get that mindset, just like they did about climate in the first place and carbon to like, okay, now we've got to get that attention there. And as far as I'm concerned, this does not have to be my solution. I don't have to drive this to completion. If wonderful, talented people who solve big problems want to step in and say, hey, okay, now we know what we need to do, I'm all for it. And if somebody says there's a better idea, I'm for that too. But I'm just not accepting that we're going to just retreat and lose this war against the sea.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, got it. And looks like this CNET could create entire new inland ecosystems and economies, right? So, what might these look like in, say, 50 years from now?
Yeah, I mean, just look at what the world has done in the last 100 years, right? Air conditioning changed the way we could live in a lot of parts of the world, right? Who would have wanted to go visit Dubai 100 years ago, even if you had an airplane to take you there, right? But now with the new technology of air conditioning and other things that we've been able to accomplish as a people, right? We're building cities in places that you might not have imagined. Imagine
Yeah.
now Western Australia, parts of the Sahara, southern Argentina, and some of these other places that have lots of potential land to use, that there could be hundreds of millions of people living there in another 100 years, right? I mean, that we could take these from a couple of little coastal villages with some mining operations and the outback to a place that millions of people can thrive and new coastal cities and just more and more as we build this out over time, places to live. What excites me also is imagine, people who are in the construction business generally now, if you're for a big company that, you do a project in Dubai, you build a building or whatever, then you move to Sydney, Australia, and you build a tunnel for 5 years or 8 years and you move, they're very transient. But imagine for people in that business to move to Western Australia and say, you could raise 7 generations here, right? You can put down roots and you won't have to keep moving, right? You might have to go a little further to on the high speed rail to get to the work site 10 years from now than you do now. But you and your family and generations could really thrive here and build these whole new cities and economies and everything from scratch. That's what's really exciting to me is what the opportunity is and what it could really look like when it's all done.
Hmm. Yeah, got it. And having advised powerful corporations, especially the private sector, right? So, do you think the private sector will lead climate action faster than governments? What's your take?
I think it's going to have to be both. This is way too big of a project for any kind of private entity to do on their own. I mean, just some of the people we've talked with in Australia are getting really excited about this. But again, the notion that we need to buy up hundreds, if not thousands, of square miles of land, tracts of land, that's going to require some permitting. We've already had people tell us, hey, it's going to be problematic if you take these areas and fill them in and dig it out and cover it with seawater and all that. But we're also like, hey, that elevation of that area is only 80 feet. Someday it's all going to be covered with seawater, whether we like it or not. Wouldn't it be better for us to engineer a solution to where we can put the animals and the habitats there in a place where they can be safe and protected, but also, keep them from drowning ultimately, right? So those are things that we need to do. It's really going to take global buy-in. This has got to be something where nations around the world come together, just like they did with the Paris Accord, and really say, hey, okay, we've got to do this. How are we going to do it? And one of the things that we have in mind is to potentially, when you look at how much money major coastal government areas are looking to spend already that they're spending and forecasting over the next few decades, it's in the trillions. I mean, really, you look at Singapore, they know their airport won't survive. They're budgeting all these things. San Francisco airport is like 5 feet above sea level right now. There's massive amounts of money that's going to be required. And near San Francisco Airport, where I used to live, they spent $111 million to build a kind of a seawall and levee around the town or whatever to protect it. And that's good if it doesn't go up but more than 2 or 3 feet. But if it goes up 10 feet, that's just a big sandcastle that'll be washed away. So what we were thinking about, and I've actually got some buy-in from the Silicon Valley folks, is what if we could use something like the World Monetary Fund? It's like, okay, Singapore, you were going to spend $80 billion to do this. What if you took 10% of that and, put it in a central fund, and then every time somebody digs something or that captures 2 millimeters or 1 millimeter of sea level rise, that is worth $100 million, that project. So even in places in Central Africa where they say, oh my gosh, we have nothing to do with sea level rise, but we've got a lot of rain. And if we could build and capture some water here, and every time we capture the equivalent of some volume of water that offsets the sea by 1 millimeter, 1 foot, whatever it is, we could get hundreds of billions of dollars to do this because everybody benefits, right? And then Singapore didn't have to spend the other $72 billion because that $8 billion went to fund a solution instead of, just building again more sandcastles. So that's kind of the global possibility that we could all play a role in this. If it's Canada capturing more ice, Northern Russia capturing more ice, some form or fashion, and we can measure and say, okay, yes, you made a difference, and we can measure that. And here's the money to cover whatever you did to help make that happen, right? So it could have some real economic viability that would be, help fuel this. And that's kind of what we're looking at.
Yeah, got it. Now let's talk from the engineering standpoint. What are biggest challenges of building these massive inland lakes or waterways?
Yeah, as I alluded to earlier, if we had everything ready to go, right? We've got permits, we know what we're going to do. We've got Australia and other places ready to go. And, I think first, we're going to need to re-engineer our digging equipment. Where we build ships right now, we might want to build massive digging equipment types of things and stuff to move earth quickly. We might want, ships and other things, conveyor systems to move dirt. All these things, would be opportunities for us as well. We also need to really, I think the pumping of water may also be something we accelerate, because as I've talked with some of the top civil engineers, they're like, there are limitations on how deep we can dig. You run into underground water issues and things like that that could minimize how, can we dig something 300 feet deep or 3,000 feet deep or 30,000 feet deep? Even though the earth is 4,000 miles thick, we've only gone a few miles deep into the earth and at all, right? You run into heat issues. A lot of things happen there. And that's why kind of, to me, the notion of if you had a bulldozer the size of the Titanic, and suddenly you run into some water issues. Well, 6 feet of water is not going to matter to this thing that's 300 feet tall. That's like a puddle, right? It could easily move it out, get it going. Those are possibilities of what we could do. And then the other thing I think we may have to look at is a lot of desalination, the ability to desalinize water at an epic scale. Because it'd be nice if we ended up building these series of lakes, and we keep going bigger and bigger, but we also have the ability as we go inland to make those fresh water instead of salt water. And again, how we would do all that, there are issues we still have to resolve. But I'd say, again, the equipment we build to dig, the equipment we deal to create to pump water, and new ways to desalinize. Those are the big three I see.
Right. Yeah. Got it. And Russ, this has been an incredible conversation, and I would say eye-opening conversation as well. And it's time for us to add some more spice and excitement to the episode, which means it brings us to the second rapid fire round. And if you are ready, let's continue.
Okay, let's
All
do it.
right. So, yeah, yeah. So my first bullet out of second rapid fire round is: if you could have one gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, what would it say?
I would say the sea level could rise by 230 feet. But what if we can turn this doomsday into a wonderful opportunity for a beneficial system? All right. My notes are scratchy, but yeah, to really kind of send that message out and offer hope, right? Here's a reality, and then here's our
Right.
hope.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, got it. And one invention you wish you had created.
The iPhone. I wrote my first book in 1997, and I mentioned in there someday somebody's going to figure out how to blend a computer and a phone together, and probably a television all in
Mm,
one. And about 10 years later,
mhm,
a guy named Steve Jobs did it, and I
mhm.
literally was living about 2 miles from his corporate headquarters at the time he did it. So, wish I could say I was the one who came up with that.
Excellent. I love it. And one city you'd love to see proof first.
Well, Venice, Italy is it comes to mind, but Venice is pretty ahead of the game. They're not going to let themselves go under. I think the one that I'd really love to see protected is Jakarta, Indonesia. I'd love to see what we can do to help them as soon as possible,
Mhm.
and I'd love to see what we can do to help the coastal areas of Bangladesh.
Yeah.
They're saying Bangladesh may lose 1% of its usable land a
Mhm.
year going forward. Now that's just unbelievable. And there's so many people who already lost their homes near the sea who moved inland a few years ago, and they've watched their new home go. It's terrifying to see what's happening. So I'd say those two areas. I'd love to see what we can do to help.
Mhm. Yeah, got it. And what's one book that reshaped your worldview?
The Christian Bible for sure. The first time I really opened it and read it,
Mhm.
like, wow. I was not the same person when I put that book down 45 minutes later. So it's definitely affected my outlook on everything, and it's really a driver. And that's not what gives me hope. That we're going to take this challenge and turn
Mhm.
it into something good.
Yeah. And Russ, one word that describes you best.
Say kind. Um, I my wife laughs at me. She's like, sometimes you wave at the neighbor's dog. You just try to really be nice to everyone.
Yeah. And what's your favorite engineering marvel?
The Golden Gate Bridge to me, it's about 25 miles from where I'm sitting right now. I just still can't believe almost 100 years
Mhm.
ago they built that in a few years. They built it in like 5 years. And the ocean currents that roll through that gap there, where they built that is very intense. How they figured all that out and how they built something of that magnitude still amazes me.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah. And if you had a magic wand for Earth, what is the first thing you would fix?
Gosh, our struggle to love one another, right? I mean, in America, you probably are seeing how just divided things are, we've seen Gaza and Israel, and we've got to get away from that. I mean, I believe we're all connected. We all are relatives of one another. We trace back, and we've got to put this our differences aside and just quit treating each other like we're some inhuman species. We work together. Most of us agree on a lot of things. But we're letting our differences really divide us way too much.
Yeah. And Russ, here comes the last one for the second rapid fire round. You need to finish this line. The future of our planet depends on.
Oh gosh, our ability to work together. It's not a problem for the U.S. to solve. We all have to play a role.
Hmm. Yeah. Great. And after that amazing second rapid fire, let's flip back to the mainstream. So, Russ, what is one message that you would give to young engineers, environmentalists, and innovators who dream of solving global problems?
I mean, I think we're giving them the almost a blank canvas, right? Or it's like a big marble chunk of rock for a Michelangelo. You guys can create a whole new world, right? It's before us. We don't have to play the losing game. We can really turn this around. And I really see, kids, especially I think girls, more physically engaged than they were 30 or 40 years ago. They want to do sports. They want to be outside. They want to do these things. And for us to imagine going to Australia and exploring the land and surveying and figure out where we're going to build these things and how we're going to design these mega pieces of equipment to transform the globe. There's just so much opportunity. And I really think that's where the future is. If you watch some of the videos from National Geographic and so forth, they're saying that a huge percentage of the world's employment is going to come from dealing with rising seas by the end of the century. And I think it needs to be sooner than that, but that's the opportunity. And again, we can change this and have a great outcome. That's what really excites me.
Perfect. All right. So, Russ, it was a really pleasure talking to you, and I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. And how is your experience being hosted on The Guiding Voice?
Thanks, Naveen. Yeah, it's been great. Thanks for allowing me to share more about what we're trying to do with one of the biggest challenges the world's facing. And again, it's great to reconnect with a GE colleague. And thanks for what you're doing to really get some exciting messages out on a lot of different topics.
Thank you so much, Russ. I'm looking forward to hosting you again in future, and I wish you and your team all the very best in all the efforts that you're putting in to save the Mother Earth, the planet. So keep up the great work.
Thanks, Naveen.
All right. So, friends, that was our episode with Russ Walsh. And before we jump into the fun trivia section, we have a quick request. If you have enjoyed the conversation and found it useful, request you to share with at least 3 of your friends or colleagues who'd also like TGV. So spread the knowledge and help others grow just like you. And now it's time for us to cruise into the trivia segment, having an amazing conversation with Russ on how can we protect Mother Earth, especially how can we deal with the raising sea levels. I thought of presenting you a few interesting facts related to Mother Earth. So first and foremost thing is 97% of Earth's water is in the oceans, but only 3% is fresh and drinkable. And the second fact is that the Netherlands has been using water redirection systems for centuries, turning 26% of its sea territory into habitable land. And third fact is about the concept of geoengineering. It is intentionally designing Earth systems. It is now one of the most researched climate solutions globally. And the next one is NASA satellites confirm sea levels have risen over 8 inches since 1880 and could rise another 12 inches by 2050. And the scientists predict that if sea levels continue at this rate, the Maldives and parts of Florida could be underwater within 30 years. So these are some mind-boggling facts. And likewise, if you're aware of anything interesting related to Mother Earth or related to raising sea levels, feel free to comment. If you're watching this episode on YouTube, or if you found the episode on some social media platform, you can comment there, or you can comment on Spotify as well. So, folks, that's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in and also for being part of our awesome TGV family. So, until next time, take care, stay inspired, and remember, the best is yet to come. Goodbye for now. See you all in the next episode with another amazing guest. Take care. Love you all. Bye bye.